Okay, so Business Buzz episode. Rock and roll time. We got Logan Marsh, owner of a few things, and you're a local Kingman resident, Golden Valley, Kingman area, and your businesses are here, and you've got quite a background, all the way back to the days where we talked about cell phone stuff, which is kind of funny because I can talk for hours and hours and hours about that stuff. But yeah, tell us, go as far back as you can before you open up your own business, when you were maybe a kid still and you were going through high school or middle school and you started to think what you wanted to do when you got older. And where was your mind at and what direction did it take you, and kind of just like walk us through this journey to have you sitting here now as a business owner.
I think that's a crazy journey, honestly.
I know.
But it all started when I was younger. I was a kid that took everything apart. I wanted to learn how it worked. Mm-hmm. And I had a dream of being in automotive, and I had a dream of being in software. I couldn't really decide what I wanted to do, but I knew that dream included going into the military. Mm-hmm. So I enlisted in the Navy. Unfortunately, it was short-lived. I ended up having a medical issue that got me out of the Navy sooner than I wanted.
Were you at 18, or a little bit older?
I went in delayed entry program. I went in at 17.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
so I trained the day I turned 18. That's when they shut me off.
Wow.
It was awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Navy, or I can't remember?
Navy.
Yeah, it was Navy. Okay. Yeah.
So anyways, I ended up getting married really young, met my first wife at the time, and we had 2 kids, beautiful kids, loved the kids. Mm-hmm. But I was still really young, and I really, really, really wanted to focus on software. And I ended up getting into a company called Mac Practice, where we focused strictly on Apple product, dental, and small medical office software. I ended up supporting them through third party. I formed my first company. Mm-hmm. And I supported their dental offices and small private family practices. At the same time, I was not making a whole lot of money. I mean, it was not something you're going to make a ton of money at. So I took a second job working as a service advisor at an automotive facility. Mm-hmm. I really I've always been a car person. I fell in love with that job because I got to interact with the public quite a bit more.
Yeah, you get both. You get that whole introverted perspective. A lot of people will take jobs where they can just build things and do things in programming and software just so they can do it themselves without anybody around. But then when you can actually do that and you have an extroverted personality, which I think that you do, just kind of seeing you out and about, so now you're able to kind of combine the two, where you're able to be hands-on, understanding something and how it's built, how to put it back together too, which is important. And then you get the hospitality side of the service.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool.
So moving forward from there, I learned a lot of trials with that first company I formed. I was not charging enough for what I was doing, and I ended up folding the company, and I learned some pretty hard lessons. Fell back on the automotive, and then got into the cell phone industry. Mm-hmm. Moved back and forth between T-Mobile and Sprint, and then I got offered a job through a company called Wireless Advocates, Pacific Northwest-based company. And I worked my way all the way up from a sales associate to district manager in the Costco market. Mm-hmm. And I ran several stores throughout the whole West Coast area in Washington, Oregon. Mm-hmm. It was a great gig. And I learned a lot. Which is
such a crazy thing.
I know.
Because I did the same thing on the East Coast.
Really?
Yeah, I was overseeing, but not Wireless Advocates. I was doing another franchise-type business store, but they had, I think, 22 stores in 2 different markets. So I ran 9 stores in the Boston, New Hampshire, Maine area.
Holy cow.
Just supporting basically hiring, firing, training all the new people as they come on, did interviews. They did have some inventory auditors, so I didn't have to do a whole lot of that. But I tell you, when one of our stores got robbed, I had to go down to it. I had to do the police reports and figure out how much inventory was stolen. And just like even today, phones were so expensive.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a lot of phones to have a lot of money. There could be $50,000 in phones in this much of a grabbing space, when you deal with some of these smarter phones. So that's kind of a funny thing. That's similar journey, got into the cell phone thing where you're kind of combining that hospitality side of customer facing, training side with staff, and your technical know-how, so understanding how to troubleshoot things and fix things, not a car, but fixing a phone, which can be just as much of a pain in the butt,
People are impatient.
Oh, wicked bad. Yeah. And it's an extension of them. So
exactly.
It's so personal to them. They're like, if they don't have it, it's their lifeline. It's just like their car. My car's broke. I can't go anywhere. What do I do? So yeah, you're dealing with people's heightened emotions.
And back in that time frame, it was a lot less like it is now, where there's so much readily available information on the internet, and videos and TikToks on how to do things.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Back in that time frame when you still had BlackBerry and you had Apple coming out and Android was still fresh, you had so many people coming in. And you were their dedicated trainer.
Yeah.
You were their
100%.
trainer. Not only did you sell the phones and you have to meet your sales goals, but to retain that customer base, you had to spend typically 30 minutes to an hour with them more than once.
Right. Sometimes daily.
Yes.
Until they finally understood how to check their voicemail and send a text. And yeah, I remember showing people how to use the calculator on their phone. Things like that. Just the real basic stuff. People are so used to picking up their phone off the wall and then dialing the number, so they would be like, okay, do I need to start it before I dial? And it's like, no, you just dial the number and then hit call. They're like, oh, so I don't hit call first, then the number, because they're thinking of the whole off the hanger,
off the hook, yeah.
So it was quite a learning curve learning that.
There was when I was fresh into that business, there was one particular older couple that really stood out to me. They were in for their first flip phones. And they at home still had a rotary phone.
Ooh, yeah.
That was back when rotary was still around, kind of, but it was phasing out. And at the time, before Verizon took over and bought them, it was called AirTouch Cellular. And they got their first flip phone. And I spent probably 3 hours with this couple. And they came back the next day and didn't retain anything. This went on for like a week.
Wow.
And finally they understood it, but it was important to them because they were going to travel.
Yeah.
And they finally understood. They didn't understand the concept that it didn't have the tones.
Oh yeah, that's
of
true
the rotary
too.
phones.
Yeah, and
it was crazy.
That's so funny, huh? Yeah, there's been some weird, technology changes, and just watching the different generations adopt the new technology and see the points where people just don't get it. My biggest moment in the cell phone world was it was an owner of a theater, a movie theater it was an up and coming movie theater. It hadn't even, I don't think, opened yet in Southern Maine, and it was going to be the biggest, most grand. It was when they first started doing armchairs, nice, comfortable chairs, and they were so it was very big deal. And they came in and they needed 50 Blackberries for the whole company because they were out of Massachusetts. But I was dealing with the owner, the CEO, because he was the one that was launching this new theater. And he came into the store and he was having an issue with his Blackberry. That was back when you had to sync it manually to your computer
with the USB cable.
Yeah. Yep. So he was syncing it, and it always would. And this is when I started really learning what these big owner guys did. I'm I'm using my BlackBerry to send emails here and there, and I was running stores, but seeing him, he had a calendar that was 3 years out. So he had flights booked, stuff for years, and it was crazy. And so he was having an issue where he would have all of it on his computer, but when he went to sync it, it would just stop on this particular date. And so I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, man, there's nothing wrong with the date. It's everything looks correct on your computer, and then when we go to do it, it just always failed at that point. So I remember that was the first time actually dealing with BlackBerry support, but not just your normal T-Mobile support and then a BlackBerry specialist and then a tier specialist. I got all the way up to the Waterloo, the actual place where Research in Motion is, and got to that tech team where I remember literally being on this call for an hour and a half. And finally the guy's okay, we're going to send you a file. You need to do this, plug it in, transfer the file to the SD card, run it. There was some type of corrupt file in that calendar event. And by doing this patch over the phone with Waterloo and hooking it all up, I was able to get it resolved, and then it continued to do its thing. So the dude was really impressed, and I was like, wow, that was really neat, talking to some Canadian, and actually solving something that I didn't think that it was going to be possible. But yeah, you do get a little satisfaction of that. It's kind of with you, fixing cars and doing things like that, you get this feeling of pride in what you do, and you did it, you finished it, it's done, people are happy now.
Absolutely.
And that whole feeling kind of is where I think, it sounds like where you start getting to that hospitality feel of understanding, the customer side of stuff.
No, absolutely. And, I ended up leaving Wireless Advocates. It was an amazing company to work for, but that's about the time that I met Jacob, and I focused on that service advisor role for quite some time, moved up into customer relations management. I was focusing on the relationship between the technicians and the other service advisors and making sure things were flowing properly. I ended up getting sent all over the country by this company and learning how to work with different people. They teach you how to identify people's not only buying personality, but their complete persona of how they perceive their own vehicle. And the company was called ATI. It's an Automotive Training Institute.
Yeah, I heard of them.
And they're out of Baltimore. And so I ended up spending quite a bit of time training with them, paid for by the owner of the shop, and he was a great guy. It was an independent shop. Fast forward a few years, I decided to branch out on my own. Jake and I started our own shop, starting our own towing service. And that was kind of the very first time that I had a taste of success. I took everything I learned. I got the blessing of the shop owner that I was like, hey, we're going to branch out on our own. They used our towing service religiously.
Oh, cool.
And I learned so much. And they gave me such an opportunity to grow, and not only as a person, but in how to handle employees, handle customers. It's not something that you just learn overnight.
Oh, for sure.
With that said, it put us in a position in about 3.5 years that we got a really incredible offer to buy our business, and we took it. That's what brought us to Arizona.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there it is. There's the moment. Okay.
There was the moment.
Wow.
So we took about 1.5 years off, bought a big toy hauler and a fancy diesel to pull it, some toys, and we traveled the country for about 1.5 years.
Oh, cool. Dang.
And we broke down here.
How funny. We've heard that story many times.
Yes. So we ended up buying land out in Golden Valley. Absolutely love it here. Fell in love with the people, fell in love with the community, and bought a houseboat out at Catherine's Landing. We love the water. And we decided to stick it down, put the kids in school here. We were homeschooling for a short time, and create some roots. And that's when we talked about starting up a business. And there was a need for two businesses. I took a part-time job with Mojave Homes just to get to know the community, and that gave me the opportunity to meet so many people a day. Oh, yeah. And they're such a great family to work for. Bobby and Suzanne and their daughter Leah, they run a really awesome establishment, and they've got some great employees. And that really put us in a position to know what we wanted to do, and we wanted to start, hospitality, being either a bar or a restaurant bar. And at the time, we were buying land here locally, building houses on it, and flipping them before the market kind of took a tank. And
how long have you been here?
Since the end of 18.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We broke down here in December of 18, and then officially decided to stay in March.
In 19.
19, yeah.
Oh man, that was right.
They had our
COVID started.
Yeah, we were in a house. Renting a house. They had our fifth wheel for like 3 months down in Laughlin. Yeah.
Wow.
Never order a custom fifth wheel with a dishwasher, because when it fails, it takes everything with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it flooded the whole center valley of our fifth wheel. It was crazy, man.
God.
But that's kind of where it pushed us to where we're at. And it took a minute to acquire a liquor license. There's several. I don't know if a lot of people listening, but in Arizona, there's several different types of licenses. You can own a restaurant, but you have to have a certain percentage of food sales to be able to serve alcohol, and you have to apply for that license. But we wanted to serve unlimited amount of beer and wine and spirits, so we were able to acquire a 7 and then later on a 6. So that put us in a position where food's not necessary.
Right. Yeah, those are the two most important ones. Yeah, they're expensive.
They are.
And it's like a lottery system, right, or something like that?
Yeah, it's a lottery system. The 7's a lot cheaper, and actually we got a really good deal. Dr. Manley and his wife owned a 7.
Oh, that's right.
And so they gave us such a screaming deal on their 7, and then we acquired the 6 roughly a year later.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So like, what do you think your perspective on the difference between hospitality and retail, like pro services and customer service retail type environments, and that transition to hospitality that's in the restaurant sector, and certainly not just working as like a cook or a server, but like actually being the owner, where you're dealing with the inventory. And you're dealing with inventory, unlike, well, cell phones kind of had like a lifespan. Like you couldn't sit on an old model too long, but you didn't have stuff going bad in 3-4 days. So how has it been to transition into this new arena of you can't just be 100% customer focused, because you have to be focusing on everything from the food quality, the food longevity, the menu mix, the pricing, the economics that change the pricing. You know, when back in the cell phone days, you know, I was part of the ordering of, I actually owned cell phone stores later on in life. When you buy this inventory, you buy the price is the price is the price. If anything, it goes down later. In your world, it's like the price goes up and it goes down. You know, I was just at Walmart yesterday getting eggs, and I watched this guy. They
had eggs.
They did have eggs. We were walking up, me and my wife, and this guy was in front of us, and so I just waited, you know, until he was done. And he was like looking at him, and he put his finger next to it, and I'm looking at it. Then I'm just like, what the hell? $25.67 for an 18 pack of eggs. And he then like is looking at these other ones for 12 and 11. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy, because I like, you know, pasture raised. I like it when they're not in the little hen house things, and I like them to have some space to do whatever. So I'm like looking, and I'm like, man, maybe I don't need to be so picky this time, because this is getting crazy, right? So that did not happen in the cell phone world of retail, where you just have a spike in your good costs, like, and then you'd have to immediately change your pricing on your menu, or you'd just lose your butt on it. So how has that transition affected like your viewpoint on owning a restaurant and a bar?
You know, that is a really loaded question, but it's got a really great answer. So we went into that a little blind. You know, I had inventory experience.
I feel like I would have too.
Yeah. And the first 3 years, you know, post COVID, treated us amazing. There was some economics due to politics that caused, of course, prices to go up on lots of things, and it also causes people's pocketbooks to get tighter, and it also caused people to lose their jobs. So you know, there's your average Joe that was coming in now can't afford that meal.
And increases in like land and homes. Like to watch what happened for 2000, let's go all the way back to 18, right before everything went to crap. And even in 19, during mortgage rates were very low and home prices were still low. But as soon as those rates got so low, it was like too good to be true. Every realtor on the planet said, this is an opportunity for my sellers to increase their prices.
Yes.
And their buyers can get approved into these bigger prices because the rates are so low. So there's this perfect storm of actually...
It was about 19 months.
Oh, it's nuts.
I felt so lucky because we built 3 homes during that time.
Yeah.
And we made a killing.
So you saw the problem? Yeah. So
I
saw
how
it worked.
Yes.
And then it's like now here we are, you know, 4 or 5 years later, and rental rates have increased by over 50 to 80%, depending on where. Home prices have gone up to an average of like 400,000 from 250,000. I mean, huge increases. And so now we're sitting at this crazy moment of like, so when you're talking about pockets being squeezed, it's like inflation isn't just the cost of eggs and bread and cheese and dairy and meat. It's like,
it's across the board.
If you look at Kingman and, you know, I mean, what's the percentage of renters? And over the last 3 years, their rent has gone up 50%. You know, it's gone up 15 to 20% per year. Like, you know, or they move out.
I mean, even just to pick on one particular neighborhood, Birdland. Even in Birdland, people are paying $1,200 to $1,400 for those trailers out there.
Yeah. When it used to be $600, $700, you know, and so that extra cash they had to be able to do something nice and go out to eat and go have a drink out.
It's not there.
It's gone away.
So, and it's crazy. So before I really answer that question, let's talk about generations. So Gen X and Gen Z, they don't drink.
Yeah.
They don't drink.
The shift is happening.
The shift is happening. They don't go out and drink. They'd rather sit at home. They'd rather play video games. They don't participate in social activities that often. And that's not only been felt in my industry. Alcohol consumption across the country has gone down close to 20%.
Oh, yeah.
The numbers vary by the distributors you talk to, but there's massive layoffs. Just in Arizona alone, about 30 to 40% of the workforce within the distributors have either been reassigned or lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And that not only affects those industries, it affects mine.
Oh, for sure.
Because now I'm not getting the deals on the alcohol.
Right.
My prices are going up. The cost for the consumer that comes into my establishment, the cost comes in, and I'm looking at my bottom line has increased by a percentage that's almost untrackable because it changes daily.
Right.
I can't raise my prices because I lose my clientele. And I have not done a price raise across the board since, I want to say the end of 2023. And I raised my prices roughly about 15% because I had such an increase in food costs at that time. I went the whole year of 2024 of not raising any of my prices.
Just trying to hold it out just to see.
And it hurt me more than it hurt the consumer because my prices on food have gone up exponentially. Liquor prices have gone up. And, I'm not your Denny's. I'm not, but I do have economical options at my facility. I have higher end options too. And a lot of the community likes to come to Red for date night. It's date night, social gatherings, get-togethers. We're viewed more of like the cheers of the neighborhood on Wallapai Mountain Road. I have such a loyal following that come in religiously every day that we're open. And it's almost like clockwork. And if they don't show up, you're worried, are they okay?
Yeah, right. I've heard of stories like that.
It's a unique environment. I love that I built that character. But going back to the original question, how that dynamic has worked out and how I've learned, I don't say I've learned that lesson yet because every day that lesson is constantly changing. The cost of payroll keeps going up. Oh, yeah. And it's not that it's just minimum wage keeps going up. Less people come in, and it's an industry thing whole wide. It's more expensive to live. The cost of eggs.
Right.
Who's going to pay $24 for an 18-pack? I mean,
it's crazy. The guy almost bought them. I was like watching him, and I was like, "Is he really going to do it?" And then he put him back because I think there was other options, But that goes to your point. People, once they get to a certain point of pressure from certain pricing issues, they do end up flexing on the quality of what they're willing to pay for. Yes. I was willing to flex from organic pasture to just pasture. And so I went from $26. It was 18 for I think it was excuse me. It was 11. It was 11 for an 18.
And that's funny you brought that together. That is that's specific to my restaurant actually, because most of our meats are grass-fed, green finished, no antibiotics, no hormones. I only do wild caught fish, and those prices are way more expensive than the other options. And I'm not willing, and Jacob, we're both not willing to substitute that. That's our reputation. Yeah. And it's astronomical, the increase.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, and that's, and so the only thing really you can do is have other options of things that hit someone's budget, but you want to keep your quality of those top ones the same.
Correct.
So people always have a consistency when they go there. They know they're getting the best.
So we brought in soup options, sandwich options, sub options. We brought in things that we never were going to carry. Yeah. We weren't that kind of place, but we got to have economical options for people. It's an environment that people really like. And so I don't know if anybody who's listening has been to Red, but Red's really unique. There's nowhere like it in Kingman.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it gives you just that really awesome cozy atmosphere. There's 3 separate dining rooms. Two of them have their own separate bars. And then there's a dining room that's hidden off to the side where you can have, a group and nobody's going to bug you other than your server.
And that's a good point. Like you don't feel like you're in a restaurant in Kingman.
No.
There's just not a lot of places like that. You feel like you're sitting in a Scottsdale or Prescott even, somewhere like really cool like that. Because like a lot of the restaurants in town, unfortunately, we just don't have a whole lot of privately owned. There's a lot. Kingman is unbelievably saturated with like large,
corporate,
mid-size ones like the Cracker Barrels, all the way to the tons of fast food, every possible fast food option. I remember that was one thing that stuck out to me when I first moved to Kingman in 2015. It was the only place with a Chipotle in the whole tri-state. And I was like, why Kingman? Why wouldn't it be in Bullhead or Havasu before?
No, and I totally agree. So, and not to touch on this, but to bring it together to make the community kind of understand. A lot of the restaurants in the community, not all of them, but a lot of them are, even though they look mom and pop, they're owned by corporations. Yeah. And when they were owned by mom and pop before they got sold out, it was a way more unique experience. Yeah. And when we moved here, we actually got to experience that before the transition of a few of them that happened to. Yeah. And it's Jake and I don't want that to happen to us.
Right. Yeah. And I don't want it to happen. I mean, that's like when you look at when I was on the Economic Development Commission for the city, the biggest, most request things from people wanting to come here with either new businesses or retain employees, bring in new employees, anything from doctors, physicians, nurses, engineering positions at the airport. One of the requests that they had was hospitality, better hospitality, more restaurant choices that were not just fast casual or large chains. They liked the experience of going into a place that they knew was locally owned and operated, that worked with their community, that had a great environment, that was unique and not cookie cutter. The menu would change sometime weekly, with specials and things that are happening.
Which is something we've adopted. So with Red, Jake and I, we're not afraid of change. So as things had, we would notice things were not doing so well in certain areas, we'd renovate a different room and do something different. There was about a year's time frame there. We actually took one of the dining rooms, totally dismantled it, made it a game room, put a shuffleboard and a pool table, put it in TVs.
Yeah.
It was a hit. It just didn't drive the business that the tables did in that room.
Right.
So we went back to the tables, and for about 6 months we ran karaoke off the TVs in there, and that was a hit too. But I learned that it took away from the ambiance from the rest of the establishment, and I was losing my crowds, so killed the karaoke as well.
Yeah.
Karaoke brought in its own crowd, but it wasn't what we had created.
Yeah.
So we're not afraid to change things. We took it out, axed it, and turned it back into a dining room. But during that transition, we added a second bar, and the community has really embraced it. They like that room.
Yeah, I think it's nice. And like for people who haven't been there, you just got to go to experience it. But you're talking earthy tones, wood, stone, dark tones, light tones. Like it's just got good lighting. Like it does. It's completely different and unique.
It is, and it's ever changing. So Jacob,
cork walls.
He is very artistic, and he does all the cork walls by hand. A lot of them are freehand. Two of them have been planned, where he drew it up ahead of time. But he's in the middle of doing a cork wall on the entrance into the old game room right now.
Oh, cool.
And it's really neat looking. It's about 70% done. And then he's going to do another cork wall on the wall facing Wallapai Mountain Road with a waterfall with the blue corks from some of the
that's neat.
that we've collected over the years.
Oh, that's cool.
It's going to be neat.
Yeah. So what do you think, so food costs, inflation, staff is difficult to get, wages increasing. What do you think the one biggest challenge is of owning a restaurant? If you were just to pick one, is it? And usually people will say, because I'm going to give it to you, is just getting awareness that you're there and getting people in the door.
I would agree. In the first 2 years, that was the struggle.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really have that struggle as much anymore. I would say the biggest challenge is being consistent with something new. One thing I've learned about Mojave County and Kingman as a whole, they like new things. So when we're constantly changing or adding something new to the menu, we just had new custom menu books made that are really fantastic, and we can change the menu daily.
Oh, cool.
So now we're adding new things to the menu, and we'll run a special on something new, and people talk. That's the one thing I've learned about, especially being in that neighborhood. People talk a lot. You could post things on Facebook all day long, social media all day long. It's that one person that comes in, gets the shock and awe, has the great experience. Then I get 2 to 10 more people from that one person.
Right. Yeah.
And that's been the biggest hit. Going back to other struggles that I think that's important to talk about is the cost of food. The cost of food, the percentage is outrageous. I wish I knew the number exactly. But for example, my Bison ribeyes, I used to actually be able to buy those for $19 a pound. And that was grass-fed, grain-finished, no antibiotics, no hormones. I have not changed my price. But now, that same Bison ribeye, I'm paying between $39 and $42 a pound.
Isn't that crazy?
It's insane.
How is that even? So what do you think causes like something that's like made in America? What makes their price go up from the ranch? Is it
was
the grain?
hurricane, because all the bison, it's either Wyoming, North Carolina, or
North Dakota,
North Carolina, North Dakota, South
okay.
Dakota, all in the Black Mountain ranges and over to the Wyoming, Colorado.
Okay.
But there's only certain ranches that don't inject their animals.
Oh, that's true too.
So you have to be picky on who you're buying from.
Right.
But when the hurricanes came through last year, it decimated the pricing. So many of these animals that have been growing for 3 or 4 years are swept away, buried in the mud.
Gosh.
Yeah, it really affected that pricing quite a bit.
Yeah.
Same with the elk, the farm-raised elk that we get for the elk tenderloins.
Yeah.
Same huge jump in price.
Natural disasters.
Yeah.
On top of inflation.
On top of
else.
inflation, yeah.
So it's like, ugh.
And I'm finding the same thing with our seafood.
Yeah.
Our seafood costs. And I know I'm kind of veering off topic, but it's important because this is across the board for every business here in Mojave County that operates in the hospitality industry serving food. Seafood costs are astronomical. If you're buying either from Atlantic or Pacific, you're either getting from Oregon, Washington, and Alaska, or you're getting from Maine, Delaware, New York area. And just let's face it, Atlantic salmon doesn't taste the same as Pacific salmon.
Oh yeah.
And Atlantic salmon is going to be your less expensive option. You're going to taste the difference, even though it's wild caught. The price is going to be roughly half of Pacific salmon.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And it's considered. If you go to like Sam's Club, Costco, all they're offering is Atlantic, because if they brought in the Pacific, they couldn't compete.
Yeah. Wow.
I had a struggle. Like, I didn't want to bring in Atlantic, and we tried it. Customers didn't like it, so I went back to the Pacific. I haven't really raised my prices. I'm not making a whole lot of money on the salmon, but it's about the experience. It's about being consistent, and you had to learn that lesson. That was a hard lesson to learn.
Oh yeah,
because it directly comes right out of my pocket.
Right. Yeah. If you're not adjusting your pricing to the customer, then it's your bottom line.
Exactly.
Eating away.
But you also don't want to price yourself out of your market.
Right. So where do you see the future of the Red Cellar Bistro, but just kind of your perspective on your next steps and like what you're trying to evolve? I know that you're looking at doing, a cork parlor type of thing where it's like a speakeasy type situation. So talk a little bit about like where you're envisioning hospitality going and how you're kind of trying to create this trend of this new environment.
I'm glad you brought that up. So Jake and I had been talking for the last year. And for those of you who don't know, Jake is involved. He's half owner of the Red Cellar. And he came up with this great idea, because when we go to Vegas, we like to visit the off-wall places, the speakeasies, the local joints that have the great food. I'm not a strip guy.
Right.
So we got this idea. It's like, let's create something unique, more than what we have. So we're in the process of working with an architect design where we're not adding square footage to the building, but we're increasing space in certain areas so that we can offer an exclusive hidden area that only offers certain cocktails, certain food that's unique to that room.
That's cool.
And so we're going to be calling it the Cork Parlor, because it's going to be themed around wine corks and whiskey bottle corks. And it's going to be really unique. It's going to be really 1940s Prohibition, early era themed. And it's starting to come together. We've already ordered the furniture for it. I ordered the furniture late last year. And I think with what we've learned about just Kingman as a whole, liking constant change, liking something more unique, we do get a lot of the crowds of, like you were saying, I get a lot of people from healthcare professions that come in, people that never grew up here.
Right. And
this is something that they're used to where they came from in big cities.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
And so it's exciting. It's ever evolving, but we're just waiting for the complete design to come back to really finish what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's a good look at, like, restaurants aren't just about eating. Like you can do that at home. It's about the experience, the environment, the feeling that you get when you're in a space with other people that are there. Like, I mean, I think we all know that people like people watching, people like going out into places with other people are there. Nobody likes to go to the club or the bar that's dead. You want to go when there's lots of people. And why is that? Because there's a feeling you get, and you can do that. You can only do that by going out and experiencing something. So I think restaurants are definitely evolving into that.
And you're right. But the one thing about the hospitality industry that Jake and I have learned tremendously, and it's a hard lesson, you have to market to the older generation, our generation and older. Like I was saying earlier in this conversation, Gen X, Gen Z, they don't like going out.
Yeah.
They don't like going out.
No. And it's weird. I don't know how. I think you're right. I think personal gaming, the way that they communicate now with people isn't like it was when we grew up, where it was like, hey, meet me over here, okay, and you go over there and you have 3 or 4 of your friends. It's like now it's just texting by themselves individually in different places, and they don't even need to get together to communicate. They just 3-way a conversation and then get on a game and play together, and it's like, well, what the heck, like you get, so it is changing, and we have a very high older population anyway here in Kingman and Arizona in general. So, cater to that, give them what they want. Like just work on what do you guys want in that generation, our generation and above. And I think it's what you're trying to do, making it a unique experience that's changing. So there's always something new that's happening. And I've noticed that even with the large chains of restaurants, like the big guys, like the Applebee's and Chili's and stuff, they used to do quarterly menu changes. And back when I had my 2-year stint before I got into cell phones, I was a trainer at a Ruby Tuesday. Like I got hired as a cook, because I had never worked in a restaurant other than McDonald's in high school. Worked my way up to being, the highest level of trainer in the back, and then cross-trained to the front and learned that, and then bartending. And one of the things that I noticed was that every quarter they changed their menu. Same core items, but they would have these refresh inserts. Well, now the chains like the Cracker Barrels, the Chili's, the Applebee's, like these big national franchises that I consider fast casual or casual, they're changing them like every 60 days now.
Yeah.
And sometimes the menu is just being moved around, and
it's not necessarily not the same food. It's just redesigned,
making it feel new and fresh again. I think that you guys are hitting the right, nail on the head in that sense. Where like every time you go in there, there's something new that you can experience. Whether it's the menu, a drink, a new cork parlor, like something happening. Band. If you do live music occasionally, something's always happening. And I think
that's the one thing about live music. I found that we are more successful with original singer-songwriter.
Oh yeah.
Not a bunch of cover. People really like to come in and hear unique music from the musician.
Yeah.
I'd love to have K-Brick from the K-Brick show.
He does good.
He is great. There's a girl out there. She's a solo guitarist. Her name's Julia. She performs a lot at Red. But I'm pretty strict. I like original singer-songwriter. And it creates a more unique. People want to go to see that person.
Yeah, and it's not too loud.
No, it's not too loud.
To where you can't even talk to somebody that's sitting right across from you. I hate that. I mean, unless I'm in the mood for that late at night and I'm expecting it. But when I'm going to a restaurant, like where I'm going to be sitting with my wife, I don't want to be so loud that I can't hear her talking.
And that's probably one of the best parts about Red Cellar. When we originally revamped the building, when we bought it, we installed a very sophisticated audio system. So when these people come into play, they play across the audio system in the building, and each room can be individually dimmed.
Oh, that is cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's smart. That is good. Dang. That's what all restaurants need out there.
I know, there's just some are just loud, man.
So loud. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, and Red's not the only business that I own here locally.
Right.
So I also have another business partner. Her name's Bridget, and we own a company called Sky Valley Housekeeping. We focus on just general housekeeping. We do have specialized maid services for the higher end clientele, and then we also specialize in Airbnb turnovers.
Oh, that's cool.
So we have a really great group of I have to say it, I have a whole woman crew, and they're phenomenal.
Do they do commercial too?
They do commercial as well.
Cool.
Yeah. The girls that work for us are just great, and they got great families. So a lot of them have been with us since the start.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Some people out there. Think of anything else you want to go on with the business buzz?
Yeah.
What else you got?
Let's see. Well, going back to, let's talk about cell phones for a minute. Where do you see the local cell phone community going? Because with both your and I's history, where do you see it as a franchisee moving forward with all the new technology?
If you're a franchisee in the cell phone world, you're going to be gone in the next 3 years, 2 years. They've already done so much consolidation that the carriers no longer want owner-operator franchises. It was like the most, it was an interesting cycle, but the franchise model with cell phone carriers started, 30 years ago, because the carrier could put all of the risk on a individual.
Correct.
And they would pay you per every activation. So it was a commission-only based situation.
Which I remember that.
Which worked really well to grow their base, their user base, right? It's almost like if you think of what content is like. So there's a term in marketing called user-generated content. UGC. It's like the biggest, most important, most valuable thing. And in fact, Chili's is another bringing them up again. Q3, I believe, of last year, they accredited the majority of their revenue increase to one TikTok video that was a UGC. It was not a paid partnership. It was not a paid influencer. It was just a person who went in, enjoyed their triple dipper, and did a cheese pull on the mozzarella stick, a buffalo mozzarella stick, which was like her secret little thing to do, was to get it tossed in buffalo sauce. That cheese pull was like 10 million views. Now, if I were to ask somebody how much does it cost to run a TV ad to get in front of 10 million people, it's gonna cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So UGC is like this big thing. If you think of a franchise and like cell phones 30 years ago, they needed UGC. They needed user-generated experiences to grow interest in cell phone technology because people didn't know what the hell it was. So they got franchisees to get in there, put in the money, take the risk, grow the brand, and grow with them for a long time. I mean, there were some dealerships like Wireless Advocates as an example. There was other one I used to call Mobile Pollution, but it was called Mobile Solution. And I worked for one that was called Wireless Resource, which is now called Arc Wireless, which is the largest master dealer in the country. And during the evolution of them going from 1 store to 10 stores to 50 stores to 100 stores to 200 stores, they started getting sub-dealers to work underneath them. So Wireless Advocates is an example. They might have had, which they didn't operate like this, but let's just say they would have Wireless Advocate stores, and then they would bring on, Logan, you want to own your own store? Here, give me a bunch of money and I'll let you run it. And you get a 3-year lease and you're good. And we'll pay you a certain percentage of all your commission, but we're going to keep a certain percentage of it. Well, over the years, it grew these carriers into this huge non-corporately owned franchise network. All the carriers had, the majority of their stores were not owned by the carrier. And then it started shifting about a decade ago. It started shifting where the carrier started realizing that they were having issues with quality control of the actual service interactions. There was always fraud too. There was fraud throughout the entire, all this time.
Cell phones disappearing.
Cell phones disappearing, accounts being activated that were for ghost people, dead people, extra lines on accounts when they only needed 2, they had 4. They just didn't know about the other 2 because the other 2 were.
And then they call into the carrier and then be like, hey, I didn't sign these up.
So there was this constant battle, which even franchises today, like a McDonald's, has quality assurance problems. There's issues with certain franchisees that let French fries sit too long and then they get cold fries. There's all kinds of that, right? But what hasn't happened in most other franchises, like the Subways, the Dunkins, the McDonald's, the food franchises, is that they try to consolidate and get rid of the franchisees and just take the stores back. And so what happened is, about 10 years ago, this shift started happening. About 5 years ago, it went into mega mode. And basically, mega mode is some of the other carriers like T-Mobile, who was traditionally the smallest national carrier, they attempted to buy out in 11. AT&T tried to buy T-Mobile. It didn't work. So they got a new CEO that really gave them a good projection of growth. And they did it by breaking down some of the norms like
you talking about
contracts. John Ledger, yeah. So he broke down barriers such as no more overage, no more roaming costs, no more contracts, no more this, no more that. 0% financing for 24 months instead of a 24-month contract, kind of same thing. So he changed the game though, and he created a growth model, and everything was going really well. And I operated my stores from 09 to 22, and I had a business partner that did the same. Like we owned them together from 09 to 15, and then 15 we separated. And I went to the prepaid route. He continued the postpaid route. Well, unfortunately, which kind of goes all the way, that was a long story to get all the way back to what your point was as soon as T-Mobile was approved to purchase and basically buy itself into the second largest or first largest carrier in America, depending if you Verizon, I can't remember the counts of how many they have, but they basically bought Sprint. By doing that, they divested out Boost Mobile to Dish Network, which doesn't know what they're doing with those stores. And T-Mobile then was this mega behemoth. And now what they did though is they just doubled their footprint of stores that they didn't need. They didn't need 2 Sprints and 2 T-Mobiles in a pop of 50,000. So what did they do? The brainstorming started happening. Well, let's start getting rid of, because they had to promise Congress they weren't going to terminate employees. Yeah. Congress is a big thing. John Ledger's sitting there at Congress. There's video after video.
Does that really count towards franchisees though?
Correct. That was the loophole. That none of the people in Congress, because they're all a bunch of old people that don't understand the industry, and there wasn't enough actual industry experts that were on the other side of the table. All the experts were on Ledger's side and Sprint's side, right? they were all saying, no, this is great. This is a consolidation of, bandwidth, frequency, spectrum. This is going to give, and they were using all these terms and all of these things to make it sound like it was the absolute best. And then they weren't going to terminate any employees. In fact, they would just grow more. And anyway, long story short, right now in the court system is one of the largest franchise lawsuits to ever happen in America. And it's very quiet because cell phone stores are just kind of like a not so exciting thing to talk about. If it was like McDonald's franchisees going after McDonald's, it would be a different story. But this is a T-Mobile thing that happened. It's like $1 billion lawsuit.
I remember it.
And it's hundreds of stores with thousands of employees that all were told 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, due to this Sprint consolidation, you have 5 stores, you have 3 stores, you have 2 stores. These 2 stores are not getting what's called an option to renew their lease at the end of the lease term, at the end of that year. So because normally when your lease was coming up, you had to have 6-month period before the lease expired to reapply to re-sign your lease for X amount of years based on what they told you could do.
Correct.
So my old business partner got the notice, hey, you cannot renew your Bullhead store. And his Bullhead store was seeing 1,500 people a month. It's called an A door, which means his activation level, his compliance of all of the policies.
And this is directly affecting Mojave County.
Oh yeah, right here,
Absolutely.
right here. Yeah. So and he can't renew, and then a year later can't renew here in Kingman. But then it got extended, and then so the lawsuit. Where did the lawsuit come from? I mean, they have the right to not let someone renew. Well, the problem was the option to not renew was actually it was a lie. T-Mobile went to Arch Wireless and said, hey, we've got too many stores. Why don't you buy some of them? Just tell them that their option to renew is not going to be, they do not have an option to renew, and then tell them, hey, in 6 months your store is gone, so we'll take it from you at no cost. And you can go find something else to do. Otherwise, you're just going to get shut down. We'll buy your inventory back. So you're not $100,000 into the inventory. They lied, and there's evidence of it.
That's a big scam.
And they got a lot of stores to give the stores to Arch, which is now the largest master dealer in the country for T-Mobile stores. And a lot of the stores ended up just actually closing due to the consolidation, and the Sprint locations, as part of the Congress, we're not going to terminate people. Every Sprint corporate couldn't get terminated, right? So they had to keep the Sprint corporate and close the franchise T-Mobile store because T-Mobile had always been a growth of independent operators. Sprint had a lot of corporately owned because not a lot of, honestly, the reason why was because over the last decade, no one wanted to own a Sprint store because they were a declining carrier. Like they were just the smallest, they were the most declining, so they couldn't really get a lot of franchisees to come in and want to play ball.
Well, in the 2008, 2010, when they hit their last bump with their upgrade, when they got rid of Nextel and went to their new service, it actually wasn't an upgrade.
No, I know.
It went downhill really fast.
Yeah. So that story of franchisees with cellular, A, they're not even approving people to go into that business anymore. B, if you are a franchisee in the prepaid space, when I sold my stores in 22, Dan had already lost one of his T-Mobile stores. I was concerned about the same thing, consolidation and prepaid, but prepaid is still, you can have a much smaller footprint, which is important for the carrier. So the liability, I think that, and I've talked to the guy I sold the stores to. He's hoping to get 3 to 5 years out of it. So far, it's panned out the way he's expected it to work.
So with that, and I know we're getting close on time, but with that, what's your take on how it's going to go with the new relationship with Starlink, with T-Mobile?
I think that, they started iPhone when they implemented the satellite SOS technology in the phones. That was like the first, someone's in bed in the background that you don't know about. Yeah. So it was already being predicted that was going to happen. I think it'll be good. I think that most people, it's actually to me a really odd thing because the country is like 99.5% covered in cell service. The population, right?
Correct.
So not the actual square miles, but the population, and that includes not only living but even traveling. We're talking less than 1%. Needing satellite internet, I don't really know. I don't think it's really going to be that important. Certainly because just due to the technology, like your uplink, download it's fine. DirecTV, we've been dealing with downstream forever. The upstream, when you're dealing with 7 miles or whatever it is to get out to the satellite, or I think it's 7. I think that you're always going to have an issue with that. And uplink is important for video calling, uploading videos.
And now with everything digital and cell phone calls being voice over IP and not analog like they used to be,
right.
I think that I'm curious on how it's going to shake out. I was just curious on your take.
Too. I think it's a great emergency service type thing. I think it's a great thing like that. I think it's going to be, I think what really the actual plan is not cell phones. So there was a term used, maybe 8-9 years ago. It's been a while. It's called IoT, the Internet of Things. I think that with the advancements of AI and the technology of exponential growth in tech space of miniaturization of tech, the miniaturization of tech, including GPUs, CPUs, and memory allocation, and then AI, running AI locally, I think that we're actually going to have a huge bump in IoT. And IoT will be devices that are connected to a network at all times, all devices. Like my camera over here is Bluetooth. It is Wi-Fi. It's not cellular.
No.
How cool would that be to be able to go out on a hike in the Appalachians and be streaming your view to a Starlink service through T-Mobile as a partnership because they've got FCC approval to be a cell phone carrier
with no Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, nothing. It's just right to the satellite, right? So I think that we'll see IoT happening in your vehicles, in your everyday devices. Your refrigerators don't need Wi-Fi. It's just connected to the network at all times. I think that everything is going to slowly, get into that.
I think we're going to see that in, I'd say, 1 to 3 years.
Yeah. I think that's the real benefit because the networks, the networks can only hold so much bandwidth. I mean, locally, like there's only so much fiber that comes to a community, and then the fiber is only split so many ways. And then once you hit certain capacities and you start to, we haven't even started talking about 8K stuff yet. I mean, it was like mentioned a couple years ago, and I, being a tech person, I see it being enabled in certain cameras, but we're not even using it yet. I can record in 8K, but I'm not going to put it anywhere.
They're building
so as soon as that happens, now your data usage is going to go wild again, right? So then it's all compression technology and it's all these other things. But yeah, I think that it's going to be a really cool, interesting world. It's a little
crazy.
It is a little crazy. AI to me is like the big dog. That is unbelievable. And a lot of people only use like one side of it, or maybe two sides of it. Like people do not use it.
There's so much that you can use it for. I mean, a lot of people are familiar with ChatGPT,
right?
Or
asking little questions,
Grok on X,
and Copilot because it's built into Microsoft now, so it makes it convenient. But like, I bet you if I asked, because this is a business buzz, if I asked every single business owner that I have interviewed already, which is now 20, or if I asked every single business owner in Mojave County if they use more than 3 different AI services in their business, I guarantee 99% would say no. I bet you that everybody would say that they've used at least one. And
would it surprise you to say between our 2 businesses, we use 4?
Oh, well, like on a daily or weekly?
I'd say a weekly basis, yeah.
Oh, see, that's good.
So there's an AI service for menus.
Oh, yeah.
There's an AI service for of course, design. And I'm not talking about like Canva AI. There's other services that are much better. And then, of course, everybody uses ChatGPT. ChatGPT is, especially when you just let emotion get the best of you and you can't come up with the best words, ChatGPT is the best.
Make this nice.
Yeah, make this nice.
Yeah.
But, and then, of course, then you have the old Twitter, X now. Grok is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and when I say services, I mean, I'm not talking just the actual LLMs, right? So you got, you have OpenAI, you have Gemini, you have Claude, you have Perplexity that integrates a bunch of different ones. I'm talking about the layer in between the actual LLMs, like even the DeepSeek. So here's all the tech.
Correct.
With GPUs spinning up all this stuff, right? And then you have a layer of software, which talks about, you talking about software, right? Software can do different things with this tech. It doesn't have to just do one. So an example would be, 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when ChatGPT just came out, I was using a service that basically allowed me to organize my ChatGPT requests per client and allowed me to use what was called a data store, which means that let's say I had 25 clients and let's say you're one of the clients. in your folder, any prompt that I've used was organized. So if I'm going to be prompting for social, if I'm going to be prompting for website content, if I'm going to be including a prompt maybe that's separate for blogs, they'd be organized. And inside your folder, when I went into it, I would have data stores. The data store would be, I could upload a PDF, an article about your business that was written about you, and I can upload your menu for that week. I could upload flyers for events that were coming up, and that was the data store. And then when I would go to prompt, it instead of using the open internet, which I could tell it to go look for something on the internet, even at that time, this is 2 years ago, before ChatGPT allowed it, I could say, write 5 social posts about events coming up, write 5 posts about some new menu items that are on the new menu. And it would only use the data store that I gave it to look through to give me the answers back, right? So that tech is now built into ChatGPT. Now you can have projects, right? And, 3 months ago, I think it was Perplexity or possibly another one allowed for something that was called, it wasn't called Operator, but it was called web-based or something like that, where it could open up your Chrome browser and operate things for you, but it was not very good. And so one of the newest releases from OpenAI is Operator, where it opens a virtual machine.
I've seen that. That's insane.
So it's good, right? So basically, if you think of a video, a video isn't literally this magical streaming thing. It's frames, right? They're frames. What are frames? Frames are stills, they're pictures. So if you do most videos that are watched at 24 frames a second, but in that 1 second, how many frames are really different? None.
No.
1 to 2. I mean, we're talking milli things, right? So what OpenAI learned is that it could dissect a video by just maybe only doing a screen capture 1 in every 84 frames, a minute, or whatever it was. They changed the ratio from, instead of grabbing every frame out of the 24 frames, to 1 frame every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Kind of like a what is it called when you do when you do
it's kind of like that
time lapse.
Correct. That service that does the live videos off the pictures you upload.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how they operate the browser, right? So they're literally screen capturing a browser and identifying what looks like a button, what says what's based on the prompt that you give it. So, and it's a virtual machine. So when I say virtual machine, it's actually this crazy tech that was around about 15 years ago. There was this service called OnLive, and it never cracked the threshold to actually become a successful product. And it is now seen through its compression technology in Microsoft, their consoles, gaming consoles. Correct. Back then, though, we're talking, I think it was close to 15 years ago.
What was that service that Apple used when it went to Intel, where you can load both Windows and it's the same technology?
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
Windows and Apple OS.
Yeah. And so you had to have a Microsoft license to use it. And so the OpenAI, basically their partnership with Copilot, which is OpenAI, gave them the ability to, when you use Operator, it is opening up a virtual terminal with 800 gigs of storage on their virtual terminal. And it's opening up a browser and performing tasks on your behalf. Now, the biggest issues right now are, of course, passwords, privacy, two-step authentication. There's a lot of things that are going to create obstacles in this, but this is only going to get figured out pretty quick. But what it does is it allows for, if there was, it has to be a virtual terminal just in case, let's say the AI went stupid and started downloading a 280 gig file and it crashed, it filled up your computer.
Yeah.
So it uses this virtual terminal to do it all. But things that it can do practically in some of the demos was book flights for you, book Airbnbs, and do research on the Airbnbs. Hey, Operator, find 3 of the best ocean view Airbnbs in San Francisco for the week of November 1st to 14th, and also look at the best flights, for 3 people. And it will give you all these options and then ask you, is there do you want any of these you want? Option A, B, C, and would you like me to book it for you? And then, because when you set up your Operator, you can give it your credentials so it can actually log in on your behalf as well. So that type of tech is when you partner that with AI agents, which is I haven't met anybody that's used an agent yet.
I haven't.
Okay, so that is my newest thing, automations with agent enforcement.
So I'm curious. I'm going to segue you.
Yeah.
How do you think, our community is small and it's growing. How do you think the AI revolution is going to change Kingman? Because Kingman has been historically
very slow
for the growth to adopt things.
Yep, 100%.
But I think it's going to move quickly.
I think that it'll be most felt through the entities that people have to use no matter who you are in the community, just like self-checkouts.
Yeah.
You're forced to learn it, right? I think what's going to happen is...
Nobody wants it, but you have to do it.
Yep. I think what will happen is it's going to get adopted. I actually think healthcare is going to start adopting it much faster than most people predict.
The insurance companies have adopted it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, so I didn't know that. So I think that those entities are going to adopt it and make it extremely important for people to understand it. Like, when you call into someone and it's no longer a person,
Yeah.
and it's an AI agent that can actually listen to what you're asking and even access your account on your approval. So it records the call and it says, would you like me to access your account? What is your date of birth? Last four of your social. Okay, I'm in your account. It looks like you made a booking 2 weeks ago. I could do the same thing, send you an email confirmation. So what it's going to do is it's going to lower the cost of some of these primary services that people are used, so that'll be helpful to our local community. But it also will teach people that it exists and what it's being used for, and in their day-to-day, only thing really for them to change is just understanding it. When they're at the grocery store and they're having to self-check out and they're 90 years old and they've never done that before, someone comes over hopefully and they walk them through the process. But I tell you, after 4 or 5 times, they learn, take the barcode, put it a certain way, bag it myself, make sure I get my receipt before I leave.
And if you move too fast, it's going to yell at you, and then you got to wait for somebody.
Yeah. So I think that it's because of the age of our community and the lower adoption rate of technology. I think that definitely it's going to be slower, but it's going to be more. AI is going to be used to the community, and the community is just going to start understanding that it's being used.
Yeah.
Actual people using it, I think we're going to be slow to use. Just like when I moved out here, I thought that people were very slow to adopt certain marketing strategies and video, and even having a website and just some of the basics of stuff. Slow to adopt. Eventually, that we started to get closer to the normal adoption curve. But people in there every day. I don't know. Maybe the phone carriers are going to have it kind of pre-installed all the time. Alexa, wait till Alexa gets beefed up with AI. Yeah. You could have almost convinced me that it was using AI when it came out. Remember how good it was?
It was really good. It seems to have gotten a little bit.
The one that sucks is Siri.
Yeah, Siri's terrible.
And it's like horrible. You can't ask it anything. It never figures it out.
Google Home is so locked down that it's about as bad as Siri.
Oh. See, that sucks, yeah. But I think, so I think that home devices will start using AI. People will start getting accustomed to it. And I think that'll increase our adoption rate. But yeah, we're going to be a little bit behind. We just have an older generation of people,
that's not a bad thing. I really enjoy that generation.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was the ones that actually worked hard, understood, very respectful, open the door for you when you walk into a store or walking out, like get up. It just happened to my wife the other day, like some guy who was probably close to my age or a little bit younger, literally was sitting in a chair with 3 ladies there was only one chair, and an older lady, younger lady, just ladies in general, right? People. And he was a young dude-ish, and he didn't get up. And my 27-year-old wife, who's very young, noticed it because she's used to gentlemanly acts of, chivalry, and this guy didn't do it. And so that the older generation, I think that they were of the era of, chivalry and respect and honorability and honor and ethics and morality. Like those were such core things, which actually kind of goes into your other thing, but we'll talk about a different one.
We'll talk about a different one, yeah.
Like I think those things are so important. I hope they don't get lost in translation with this new generation that keep on coming up. I think that
I know there's a lot of people like myself that and like you that are making sure that your kids learn the right things.
Oh, yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
And limit technology to a
degree.
To a degree.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I want them to understand it, but not be infatuated with it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Get the dopamine.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for being on the Business Buzz and a little bit of tech chat.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I know we went over a little bit on time, but I had a really good conversation.
Yeah, and we'll get you on another one of our series like Buzzwords and start talking about some other more social things that are going on in our area, social issues and some other stuff that you're involved in. So
I look forward to it.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks.